Hello and welcome to the JackCast, your Swansea City podcast. I'm Matt Barocco and I'm joined this week by Stephen Carroll. Evening, Steve.
Evening.
Gito can't join us this week for personal reasons, which is disappointing. He'll be gutted, Steve, won't he? Because there's a lot to go through, not particularly... not mentioning the games of the last couple of days as well. We've got a few games to get through and no shortage of controversy. And I know Gito would have loved to get his claws into this and analyse the bigger picture. Are we style, are we substance? So points on the board at this stage. We've got all of those things to talk about and more besides. But let's get straight into it. Last time we spoke was after the Huddersfield game. So we've got a few games to catch up on. First of all was Coventry and one again, Steve, that we talked about, just getting back on track and making sure that Huddersfield thrashing didn't turn into more of an issue down the line. And the reaction was good, I guess, on the whole, in that the football wasn't delightful, but we were solid and we kept Coventry quiet and we got the win that meant that we didn't have back-to-back defeats and start worrying about long-term implications.
Yeah, I think it was a typical Swans win, really. It wasn't an entertaining game. It was, fairly dull, really. But we frustrated the opposition. We kept them quiet for large parts, and then, despite really not creating a lot, we got that one chance, and Cabango headed it in, and it was a well-earned 3 points. Certainly an important one as well, because, as you say, after the slip-up at Huddersfield, really, you want to get back on track quite quickly, and that's what we did. And like I say, a routine win for us, really, where despite the fact we haven't played very well, we've dug it out again and put 3 points on the board.
I remember we were talking about these two games, the Coventry and Bristol doubleheader, and there was a bit of, we weren't all in agreement over which fixture would be the tougher. And I was a bit worried about the appointment of Nigel Pearson at Bristol City, and unfortunately it turned out to be the case in a game. And confession time, I mean, I've only seen the highlights because I was working nights and I slept through. I woke up 5:15, so I just about woke up in time to see injury time tick away in Bristol City to get their third. But Steve, you watched it for the most part, and you saw what was actually probably over all the fixtures we're about to analyse, the best performance and the solitary defeat. So it just goes to show that football is a bit of a prick at times.
It's a strange game sometimes, isn't it? As you say, especially the first half was probably the best we played in, a good few weeks, really. But we just didn't obviously get the result from it. We had numerous chances in the first half and we didn't take them. I thought Bristol City were crap, if I'm being honest with you. Especially in the first half, they were terrible. They could have been down to 10 men with a guy who was on a second yellow, then got away with it with one. He got subbed soon after. But then obviously we've gone in front with the penalty in early in the second half, and you're thinking, well, things are looking good here because obviously we don't concede many, but we sort of got done with the type of wins that we've had, where Bristol City didn't do much, and the chances they've created, they've taken, but we've conceded poor goals there. Really, we've given the ball away for the first one, the second one, direct from a corner, that really shouldn't happen, should it? And then the third one, obviously Woodman has been caught, hasn't he? And he's been charged down. So yeah, it was a strange one, really, because it's the type of win that we've had against a lot of other sides, but obviously we got Swansea'd, didn't we? So
yeah,
it can happen on occasions, but it was a bit of a strange one, and I suppose it was frustrating because you felt it was undeserved, and it probably gave us a taste of the medicine that we've been dishing out.
Yeah, it was confused feelings afterwards because, of course, it was a return to something like the performances we hoped to see, but the game that didn't bring the result we would have hoped from either. Bristol City, we were speaking about the other days, it's just such a tough fixture for us historically, Steve. We don't really tend to do well against them. I know we had that absolute mauling, that 7-1 back in the early days of the Liberty Stadium. But that aside, it's not usually a happy hunting ground.
No, they're not our favourite opposition. I think that's a fair comment. I mean, we have had some wins down the years. I was thinking about this the other day. I think I was having a discussion with someone. I've been to Bristol eight times to watch us, and I think in 6 of them we haven't scored, and there's only 1 win in there. So away certainly isn't great. I think at home it's a bit more mixed. They have had a few wins at our place. I think we have beaten them as well, but yeah, they're not. I think if you tallied up certainly the fixtures between the two clubs since I've been watching the Swans, that they've definitely had more wins than we have. But yeah, it was certainly frustrating to lose to them. When I mean, it was a game really that we definitely should have won. And yeah, they're probably not a side that I look forward to playing really, because like I said, that they do seem to have a better record over us than we've got over them.
Yeah, it is tough, and you've got form then of win loss over the 4 games. It's starting to look a little bit ropey for a team that potentially want to look at automatics, certainly playoffs, but automatics is the goal. So once again, you're looking at response. So if you had to rack your memory to go back to Coventry or Bristol City, you certainly won't have to rack your memory for what we're about to talk about, which was some fantastic build-up to this, by the way. A stat that came out, which was absolutely like jaw-dropping, that the last 3 Swansea wins happened exactly 20 years away at Stoke. Happened exactly 20 years apart, and we were in the 20th year again since we'd last done it. So if you believe in fate and all that, then you would have thought, well, here we go, 4th time in a row. And so it was to be, Steve, but that's not even a quarter of the story, is it? I mean, this game had a lot. It's only trumped by the game we're going to analyse after it, but this had a lot of bones to unpick. And well, let's start on the start. I mean, a rare mistake by Mark Gahey, whose crossfield ball is cut out by a brilliant flick by Stephen Fletcher, and Powell puts Stoke 1-0 up. We're only 4 or 5 minutes into the game, and you're worried because, as I said, our wins against Stoke away don't come very often. Exactly the start we didn't want.
Yeah, absolutely. You're always thinking when you go away from home, don't concede early, whatever you do, and then try and grow into the game, really. So to blow that early on really wasn't great, was it? I mean, obviously Gray, he's made a mistake, but I got to be honest, I didn't like some of the comments that I saw online, people sticking the boot into him, because everybody does make mistakes, and he has been arguably our best player this season. So I thought to see him getting stick was quite disappointing, and I thought very harsh, really. And if you look at the goal as well in a bit more detail, I mean, I think that the other players didn't help, because if you look at the options, there weren't really many. Obviously, he's gone for the crossfield ball. I mean, he could have passed it back to the goalkeeper, but considering we had 3 defensive midfielders on the pitch, I didn't really see any of them drop in for him to try and give him an option, which is what should have happened. So I really don't think it is just down to Gray, but either way, it was a disappointing goal to concede, and obviously it does give you an uphill task then straight away. So it wasn't great, was it? And I think, well, how can I put this? We always feel like we're not, like Stoke's a bit of a bogey for us, and when you concede that early, you're not confident that you're going to turn it around, really, are you?
No, well, you're not, and you're just thinking then, well, is this just going to be the sort of game which we rue year in, year out against Stoke? Whether it's a large slice of luck that they get, as they did for the opener, or a controversial refereeing decision. Well, there was to be one, which we'll come on to in a little bit, but in the meantime, the reaction was good, and Ryan Manning, in a rare start for him, swung a ball across the box, and Connor Roberts acrobatically poked it past the goalkeeper, which was a fantastic finish. And really, he's having his best season in a Swansea shirt by some distance, and he's growing into a player who is now, I would say, undoubtedly Premier League standard. And these are the sorts of things he can offer attacking-wise. he's as good as any fullback in this division, and I can't think of anyone else I'd rather have, and he's shown it again.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he was everywhere, wasn't he, really, the other night? Obviously, for the goal, that was the standout moment. It was a great finish, wasn't it, from Ryan Manning's cross? But he just seems to pop up everywhere. I mean, there was situations in the game where, you'd look at there'd be maybe a cross into the box, and there'd be AU would be in there, and the only other player in there's Connor Roberts, and you're thinking, well, so surely someone from midfield should be getting in there. But I mean, he covers so much ground. It's ridiculous, really, isn't it, with Connor Roberts? I think we're very lucky to have him, really. He sort of plays like the fan, doesn't he, with this never say die attitude, and and it's not just that. Obviously, he's got a lot of quality as well, but yeah, he's definitely been one of our best players this season, and I would say that was one of his best games as well at Stoke.
Tactically, I mean, there has to be something in it, Steve, because our wing backs are in the box more than our midfielders. So it almost feels like when we're on the attack, we're playing 4 up front, where it would be AU and a low, and the 2 wing backs then, one we crossing for the other. So it does feel like tactically the midfielders are almost told to cover the ground that the wing backs leave as they bomb on. And Manning, he made a big statement as well in that game. He was popping up all over the place. He had a few pops at goal. He was unlucky with a few efforts. One just went inches wide. But a statement made by him too.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he's not had much of a chance this season, really, is he? So I think I did see some stats really regarding Manning the other day that for fullbacks he'd created more chances than anybody else last season by a long way when he was at QPR. So I mean, I think he's been quite unlucky really that he hasn't had much of a go. I certainly think Bidwell in the last few weeks especially hasn't been especially good. I don't think he's been awful, but I think Manning's unlucky that he hasn't had more of a go. And I think in that game, really, he showed that he should get more game time. He did very well. He's one of our better players, and he offered some good shots from outside the box as well, didn't he? It could have been. He was probably one of our other big threats on the night. So I would say that was definitely one of the more encouraging aspects of the night.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the second half came about, and Stoke made a couple of changes to try and freshen things up. Ex-Leeds youngster Jack Clark came on and looked to cause some problems. He did cause problems. He also liked to throw himself to the ground quite a lot, Steve, which made the irony of what was to happen in deep into injury time all the sweeter as a rare, I have to say, foray into the box. Certainly in the last 10 minutes, it felt like the game just wasn't. We weren't going to be able to carve open that chance. We didn't look like we could just get that last chance. And watching it back, and obviously being a Swan son, and so I'm sure everyone listening has as well. I've watched it back from every angle 20 times, and it's some very clever play by Connor Roberts, who signals in for the pass to go inside of him for Norton to run into. So, and he blocks off the defender covering, and then Jack Clark, who's chasing Norton into the box, and Norton gets his body across the front of the midfielder, and contact or not, he goes down, Steve, and the ref appears on first glance to look like he's given a free kick the other way. His arm is starting to raise, pointing upfield, and then he turns around and points to the penalty spot in a bizarre twist of fate. He's awarded the Swans a penalty in the 95th minute, and utter delirium ensues in households across Swansea.
Yeah, it was. Well, I still can't really believe it now. I mean, my first thought was that it's not a penalty, and then you see the replay and you think, well, we've definitely got away with one here, because I don't think there's any contact at all, really. I think Norton's just gone down. Maybe it's in an act of desperation, thinking, well, we're not going to do anything here. If I go down, the worst comes to the worst, I'll get booked, or if we might be able to con the ref, and that's really what happened, isn't it? So, yeah, amazing to see him give it, and then you're just thinking this would just be an amazing win, because I didn't think a draw was necessarily a terrible result for us, and it's probably the fair result as well, if we're being honest. I think we, in the second half, certainly towards the end of the game, we were pushing for a winner more than we usually do, which was encouraging. but then to see him give the pen, I mean, you can't believe it really. And AU's run up was quite nervy, as it usually is, but Mr. Cool stuck it away. So yeah, a brilliant win. And let's be honest about it right now, as much as we did get a bit of luck, I haven't forgotten that Stoke had that ridiculous penalty in the last minute down here a few years ago, or that Victor Moses dived to win a pen up there, or that Joe Allen scored a winning goal that was clearly offside. So I think if we were going to get a bit of luck, it's long overdue that it was against Stoke, a club I don't like very much, and one that have screwed us a few times. So I have no sympathy whatsoever with them. I think it was long overdue.
If you said to me, how would you like to beat Stoke? I would actually say I want to screw them over, because we've had it done to us, and it's a horrible feeling that you don't get what you deserve, and you feel cheated. And we've done it. We've had that feeling plenty of times in the past, and as nice as it is to batter teams and win comfortably 2 or 3-0. There's a nice new feeling at the moment in the Swansea camp that we can shithouse our way to win, and to screw Stoke out of it after, as you rightly point out, our history with them is probably the nicest way to do it, and actually make them really bitter and angry in the meantime. So we're getting a bit of a reputation, aren't we, Swansea? We're not particularly the most liked team. Long as gone the days where people had Swansea as their second team. Now it's very much a case of everyone's gunning to get us down. So you very rarely see a ref almost change his mind mid-decision in a game, especially a massive last-minute decision like that. And that was one of those rare occasions. What you certainly didn't expect to do is see the same thing happen again 72 hours later. So obviously we have to talk about the game against Middlesbrough, Steve. And after what was a fantastic, unexpected win against Stoke, tails are up, and you're thinking, right, Warnock, before the game, he starts with the mind game, Steve. He starts talking about the Stoke, saying it's embarrassing, saying it's disgusting, etc. And he is one for mind games, Warnock, isn't he? And he likes to try and point score before a ball is kicked, maybe get in the ref's head that any 50-50 decisions shouldn't go the way of the Swans, and maybe influence using the dark arts in that manner. If anything, if we look at the big decisions in the game, it didn't work for him at all, did it?
No, it definitely didn't. I mean, I didn't really like that from Warnock, sticking his nose in. First of all, yeah, okay. I think there can't be many people listening to this that think it was a penalty. Okay, it wasn't. Not for me either. But I mean, he shouldn't have been sticking his nose in. That's like he's trying to play mind games, as you say, as if to say, look, they've had a dodgy decision, you ref. Make sure you don't give them one on the weekend. And as I'm sure we'll get on to, there were one or two questionable decisions, weren't there? But again, like with Stoke, Warnock's a man you choose to screw over. So again, I hope he had a very, very enjoyable journey back to the northeast.
Exactly as Stoke, I would like this way to beat a Neil Warnock team as well. Screw him over, make him bitter, angry, and get himself in trouble. And all of these things is what's happened. So, in an uneventful first 40 minutes, I think that's being kind. Middlesbrough came closest with a near post effort that Woodman somehow managed to turn around the post. I don't think he knew a lot about it, to be honest. It came off his foot and went wide. But apart from that, Steve, I think saying it's uneventful would be kind. It was boring, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's what we're like these days. If we're being honest, I mean, we don't play nice football these days. We are very much hard working, like grind oppositions down and make it difficult for them, and then we usually find a goal from somewhere, which is what happened again. Really, I mean, we offered next to nothing, I would say, in the first half, but. There was a mistake when there 2 players going for the same header. It drops to AU and he's put it away. I mean, it's amazing how often we seem to be scoring from our first meaningful chance in the game, really. I mean, I can't believe it keeps happening, but it does. And, again, we had the lead then, didn't we, at the break, even though, if we're being honest, we didn't play that well, did we?
We didn't. And we were talking we did a quite lengthy piece last podcast about expected goals and the implications of those reading too much into statistics, and it is so often the case with us that we're clinical. I can't think off the top of my head, and I go back to the low misses against your Norwiches and your Brentfords, where they would have made us draw and win the game respectively. In those games where you think we've missed good chances, but I could probably count on one hand how many times I felt that way in recent months. Indeed, this season, we don't miss good chances. We tend to stick them away, and when we do, this batten down the hatches method of playing, which when up until recently we had a ridiculously good defensive record and clean sheet record, which was working for us, explains the expected goals. I mean, if you're scoring off your first chance and then you settle in to win 1-0 and you're managing to do it week in, week out, then it's going to show a very poor expected goals column. And again, you saw it there, Steve, as you say, created very little. I couldn't even say when that ball came back in the box from, I think it was Connor Roberts heading it back into the mixer. You wouldn't put that down as an expected goal because it was two Middlesbrough players who were going for the same ball, got in each other's way, and I think it may have been Bowler actually who headed it back towards AU. Instead of Johnny Howson, who probably would have got there and cleared it away. And AU, if your luck's in, your luck's in. And he's got the ball there at an angle. He's smashed it across the face of goal and has taken the deflection off the defender at the near post. And it's gone in at the near post beyond the keeper. So, as I say, 99 times out of 100, that either goes right across the face of goal or the keeper saves it. But sometimes you just need that luck. And I think it's fair to say that passage of play brought us a bit of luck. But my God, our luck wasn't finished there, Steve, because in the second half, Middlesbrough came out and they came out to get a goal, and we did nothing really to repel their advances. I mean, we spent all of our time for about 40 minutes of that second half, 35, 40 minutes of that second half in our own half. And there was a graphic that came up on the TV that showed us having 0% midway through the second half, 0% in the Middlesbrough half. The way the game was going, we just didn't have an out ball. We didn't obviously have Jamal Lowe on the pitch because he's been rightly rested. But obviously he runs the channels. He gives you an opportunity to get up the pitch. And without him, we were struggling, really struggling. And you would have thought in that second half that Middlesbrough had scored a very worthy, delightful equaliser. But it wasn't to be. And I think probably this is the biggest controversy of the game, Steve.
Oh, it's got to be the biggest controversy. I mean, I couldn't believe when the ref blew, if I'm honest with you, and I can't be the only one that felt like that. It was just a bit like, well, what's he blown for? And then obviously it was, to be fair, it's a great hit from Bowler on the edge of the box. It should have stood. There's, I don't think you can say it any other way. So, yeah, for me, that's the big decision of the game that the officials got wrong, and we got away with one, really. I mean, I think we've all criticised VAR this season. That's not something I'm a big fan of, and I think we're a bit lucky that it's not in our division because we would have been done over with that one for sure. So, yeah, I think Middlesbrough have got a right to be aggrieved on that one. It was a very strange call by the ref, but we benefited from it then, didn't we?
Yeah, that was Bowler who scored the goal that was ruled out as well, and I think there's two bits of unfortunate luck that he had in the game. Must have thought it wasn't his day, but just to clear something up, I mean, there's been a lot of accusations that Fulton dived and he wasn't touched. Now, there are several replays if you're interested in actually doing it before you throw crazy accusations about that Fulton dived. You can see that whilst Balassi did poke the ball and get there fair and square before Fulton, in his follow-through, he does land on and put his body weight on Fulton's ankle. I don't think it was a foul because he's moved the ball away, and in the second movement, which is accidental, he collides into Fulton. But Fulton doesn't dive. He gets hurt in the challenge. But I do think the goal should have stood. I don't think there's many people realistically who would say otherwise. But the ref blows before the ball is struck. And I mean, when that happens, you've got all those permutations. And I thought the game before against Stoke that the ref blew for the Norton penalty a second too soon, and that's where you get that indecision, because I think he's blown, and he's maybe thinking, I need to make a decision now. Do I give a free kick and book him? But if I don't think it's a dive, I mean, what perhaps in hindsight he might have wanted to do is just rule out any penalty and just let the ball trickle out for a goal kick, as you see so often. But having blown his whistle, he needs to point somewhere. He's pointed at the spot because he obviously didn't think at that moment that it was a dive, and he had to point somewhere. So I feel like the same thing happened here as well. He's blown his whistle, and maybe had he given himself a second to maybe think about it, but he's blown it while the ball's in play, and so the game has to stop. And that's the point really where Warnock's blood pressure started going up and up and up, and led to what was a fantastic interview post-match. So yeah, they did get their equaliser in horrible circumstances from a Swans perspective. Of course, they brought on an ex-Cardiff player, and when that happens, you know you're in trouble. And Mendes-Lang was instrumental in the equaliser, who slipped it inside to Morsey, and his shot took a cruel deflection off Fulton beyond Woodman, and you're in the 91st, 92nd minute there. And only a minute earlier, I was screaming, where on earth has the ref found 6 minutes from? And obviously, when the ball hits the back of the net, you're torn then, aren't you, Steve? Because you are thinking, right, we need to hang on now because we've been absolutely dreadful. And the other half thinking, well, thank God there's 4 minutes left, because it gives us an opportunity to at least try and get upfield again. The goal was a cruel blow to us, though.
Yeah, it was. To be fair, I was actually quite relaxed, just because we're so good at seeing these leads out, and even when we've been under the cost, we usually find a way to make sure that we don't concede. So I was quite surprised then when they did score, and obviously because it was so late in the game as well. But if we're being honest, we couldn't really complain because we'd not played well. As you say, the second half we were very, very poor. Like the graphic that showed we'd barely been in their half was abysmal, really. I mean, that would be awful if you're a team that's struggling, let alone a team at the top. So, it felt like Middlesbrough were all over us, and like to see a Warnock team all over, it was not exactly encouraging. So, we couldn't have any complaints, I would say. But as you say, it's a big blow at that stage of the game, because you think that obviously you're going to see it out. But yeah, it got a bit more dramatic after that, didn't it?
It did. And we did bring Jamal Lowe on. I remember texting at the time thinking, now it's 20 minutes left in this game, 25 minutes left in the game. Bring Jamal Lowe on now. He's not got 90 minutes in. We keep flogging him, but he can make a difference in short spells. Even if he is tired, he can come on, give us that burst of energy for a short period of time. Especially bringing him on against tired defences rather than starting him against fully fit and running defences. He's going to hopefully get a little bit more joy. And he gets a little bit of the rub of the green down the right-hand side. He breaks away from his man. And this is, again, a very rare foray into the Middlesbrough half. And he cuts it back. And as the camera pans across, you're waiting to see where it comes to. And Bidwell is racing in on it, who's been subbed on. And he's got there before the defender. And you're looking at the 95th minute again. And once again, you're looking at it, and he's got there before him. But once again, you see, and I can't believe we saw it twice in 3 days, Steve. But once again, you see a ref changing his mind. But this took like 4 seconds. And he points for a corner. And then, whether he's had a word in the ear from the linesman or what, I don't know. But inexplicably, he's overruled his own decision and given the penalty. Now, I think it's fair to say it was a penalty. I don't think really there's much contention over the actual penalty award, but it will rile Neil Warnock up to no end that the ref has given a corner and then 3 seconds later pointed to the penalty spot.
Yeah, it definitely will. I mean, my first instinct was that it was a penalty, and then when he didn't seem to give it and he gave a corner, I was like thinking, I'm sure that's a pen. But then obviously he did give it, so I think he got the right decision, but it would be annoying if you're on the wrong end of it, really, wouldn't it? But I mean, for me, it's a clear pen. It's a foul. He's caught him, and we're there all over again, aren't we? Like Stoke, and AU has done the job for us again. But
Ice in
absolutely
his
bonkers.
veins.
Yeah, he seems to have, doesn't he? Because I mean, you can't imagine the pressure really of a last-minute penalty because you know how crucial it is, and you do quite often see last-minute penalties missed just because the pressure is so intense. I mean, I remember when we had with Andy Robinson years ago. I think we played Gillingham, and we dominated all game, and that was for a winner, and I think it got saved, and you're just absolutely gutted. So you can never be certain that it's going to go in, but yeah, he stepped up, didn't he? And these things just seem to be going for us, don't they? I don't know why, because I'm not even convinced we deserve it, but we just, these little things, we just seem to get over the line, don't we? It's bizarre, really. I don't know whether it'll carry on like this, but yeah, we did the job, and another 3 points on the board.
It's just incredible. As you say, the way it's going at the moment, of the 4 games we've spoken about, the one game which we actually could pull a hat on and say that was a good performance was the only defeat. And the other 3 games where we didn't really turn up and we just barely scraped by were 3 wins. So football, it's a funny old game, but that moment, I think I remember at the end of last season, playoff semis as well, are you missing a penalty against Brentford? But when the stakes are high, it's painful, isn't it? I don't think there's many more painful things to watch than a last-minute penalty, whatever side you're on.
No, I don't think so, because basically it is the difference between a win and a loss. Oh, sorry, win and a draw or a loss. They're just huge moments, aren't they, in a game? And I think no matter, obviously, if it gets missed, for example, the opposition team are going to celebrate it like a goal, and obviously if it is a goal, but we know what the feeling of a last minute win is like. It's unrivaled, really, isn't it? So yeah, they're horrible. It's like sudden death shootout, really, isn't it? I suppose that's the best way of describing it.
Yeah. So yeah, pretty much from kick off, a couple of kicks around, and the ref blows up for full time. And it was just everyone was gonna. Well, I'm just gonna get the popcorn out now and just watch this drama unfold, because full 11 men from Middlesbrough surrounding the ref, and Warnock trudging up to him and screaming in his face, and that's enough to get a rap from the FA. He'll get in trouble for that, because it's a lack of control of his players, and he'll get a fine for that in itself. Then what happened post-match, and I always think it's cruel of the TV companies to insist managers do their post-match interviews, particularly in circumstances like that. But TV gold it was, because if he was on a fine for going on the pitch, he's on some ban now for what he said in his post-match interview.
Yeah, I can understand he was annoyed. But I mean, I didn't like his comments about Manning saying he's deliberately kicked someone, because I think that's crap for a start. You can't also say that, because our manager's father was a ref, that's influenced it. I mean, it's garbage, isn't it? And the fact is, don't forget that our manager's father is actually a Cardiff fan. So, yeah, Warnock, it's what he does, isn't it? He loves moaning at refs. So this was a golden chance for him to moan at the ref. And again, like I said to you earlier, I don't have any sympathy, because I just don't like the bloke. And as soon as you manage Cardiff, especially, then as far as I'm concerned, I'm happy for you to have endless misery. And he had a miserable day yesterday, didn't he? And I think that's great.
That's beautiful. And in no other manner would I like to beat. I'd like to beat him every way possible, but the best way has to be to make him boil. And absolutely, his piss was boiling all over the place in that post-match interview. And I think he's when he starts implying corruption and bringing the game into disrepute, and suggesting there's some sort of to say that Steve Cooper's dad is in some way influenced in the referee's room is a phenomenal statement to make, and has been roundly criticised, by the way. Only a few football Twitter accounts of teenagers, whatnot, have gone, oh, good on him. No, anyone in football has looked at that and gone, that's bang out of order. you can talk about challenges. The ref should have booked him earlier. He should have done this. He would have cut out that nonsense. The tactics were wrong, whatever. But to suggest some sort of corruption is surely going to land him in hot water.
Oh yeah, you would have thought so. I mean, but the only thing I would say is that our manager wasn't great when he said that, was it Andy Woolmer had like a personal issue with us, and I was thinking he'd get like a serious dressing down for that, but I think all it was a fine. I thought there'd be a ban for it as well. So, you would expect a fine and a ban, but you just never know, do you?
No, there was probably the 3-minute interview with Sky was probably more entertaining than most of the match, in truth. But it was worth waiting for. Absolute incredible to see Warnock in that vein. It's a man we love to hate. He hates us, Steve. I think it's fair to say. Ex-Cardiff manager as well.
Yeah, he doesn't like us. I mean, if you look at last year when he was quite bitter, wasn't he, after we beat them in the derby, and he was on about, it wasn't that loud, it'll be much louder at the return game. I think he needs a hearing aid, in truth.
Yeah, it just leaves us in an enviable position. The context of yesterday's win was added to by the fact that Brentford's game was called off on Friday. It was due to be played on Saturday. It was called off on Friday for an outbreak of positive COVID tests in the Rotherham squad, who they were due to play. So that meant Brentford, we had 2 games in hand. Yes, they ended up effectively being one of them by default of them not playing. So we used one. So you'd have Brentford fans. I mean, they'd have been watching. It was on Sky. It was on TV at 3:00. You'd have had people watching, and it was almost an added pressure for us to get a result. And in the manner in which we got the result, it almost feels like, as you mentioned earlier on, you almost feel resigned to the fact, in a positive way, that it is just meant to be. Because no matter what is thrown at us, and no matter how poorly we play, we seem to find a way to win the game.
It does seem like that, doesn't it? Because you just think, there's a lot of things going for us at the moment. I mean, it might not carry on that way, but it certainly feels like things go in our favour. We are good defensively. I think it is fair to say that, but we just seem to find the goal, don't we, from somewhere to win a lot of games by that 1-0 score. No, that hasn't happened so much in the last couple of games, but that does seem to be our thing. We still don't create a great deal, but we usually just find the goal from somewhere. So you do wonder, don't you, where is this going to take us? Because we're sort of the experts at it, aren't we? The ugly win, really. That's our default. We haven't had many stylish wins. I think that's a fair comment, but it seems to be working for us at the moment, doesn't it?
It does, and where it leaves us is in 3rd place. We're getting a bit comfy in the 3rd and 4th positions lately, but we've always had that extra blanket of the games in hand, and we've got one in hand of Brentford now, who've inexplicably dropped to 4th over the weekend, and Watford, who are on a great run themselves, are up in 2nd. It looks, for all intents and purposes, that the league title is wrapped up. Steve, Norwich 10 points clear. We do have the 2 games in hand, which could potentially bring it down to 5. But that said, I mean, that's not neither here nor there. I mean, the one that's being fought for tooth and nail now is that elusive 2nd spot, isn't it? And Watford a point ahead of us, but with us with 2 games more in hand is it's looking quite nice, dare I say it, at the moment.
Yeah, I think it is starting to look like that. I would say that, I'm sure that us, Watford and Brentford, are thinking, well, Norwich, they're clear now. Our target is 2nd. I'm sure, ideally all 3 sides would love to win the title, but if they were offered 2nd right now, they would take it. So I think that's where we're at, really. Norwich have got that big lead, and it feels like it's theirs to lose, really, and that 2nd space is the one that's up for grabs.
It does, yeah. I'm just turning a quick nose through now. The other news, after looking at all that, we'll quickly go on to Jordan Garrick, who's on loan. But we did talk about him a while back about, well, he's gone on loan for the end of the year, till the end of the year, and he's actually out of contract in the summer. It felt like an odd decision to make, but we have tied him down to a 2-year contract extension. I know you're a fan, and you hope that you'll have the opportunity to break into the lineup next season.
Yeah, I think that would be great. I think I've quite liked Garrick really from the start. I think there is something about him. I do also think he's a bit raw and he needed some experience. So, I think he's done all right to Swindon from what I can gather. He's chipped up with a goal on one occasion. So, I think that was a good move for everybody, really, him going there. And you definitely wouldn't have wanted to have lost him on a free. It would have been poor business, I think, because he's definitely a player that even if he doesn't come off, that could well shift the fee. So, yeah, I'm hoping that he might get a chance here next season. I think it'll be difficult if we go up Mount. I think then may end up out on loan again. But I think if we weren't to go up, then I think there's a chance we'd be playing a different formation because you just don't know how the squad would look like. And I'd like to think that it might benefit him. I mean, you look at someone like Ollie McBurney when he was here. He went on loan, didn't he, for half a season at Barnsley. And I think that didn't do him any harm then for coming into our first team. So you'd like to think that's what the situation would be if we don't go up.
Yeah, absolutely. Another note on Warnock's comments is that Cooper has ruled himself out of getting involved in tittle-tattle, as he calls it. And his choice of words is funny. He said, we are a classy club and I am a classy person. Very, very thinly veiled dig at Warnock's character, which I think most in football will agree with, Steve.
Yeah, I would have thought so. Yeah, that's the thing. But I would say, as I said earlier, Cooper's had his digs at referees himself and they haven't been great. So, yeah, I haven't forgotten that either. That probably wasn't great, but Warnock he's known for these things, isn't he? I think when he went to Cardiff, he said, "This is my type of club," and I think if Cardiff was a person, then Neil Warnock wouldn't be far off, would he?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was looking for the Swans, as I said, it's looking very, very nice as the table is looking at the moment. And we have a game midweek, or Tuesday, Saturday for the foreseeable. Blackburn, 6 o'clock kickoff. And this one is away, Steve. And you have to say that it's got to be one that you would, again, you'd identify as the teams that are looking to go up would get a win at Blackburn. They're not, they're not any great shakes themselves.
No, they're not. I mean, I think they've got more firepower possibly than we have, but I think they did win yesterday, but they're not, they're not a great side. I think we've drawn there, I think, haven't we, on our last couple of visits, 2-2 on both occasions. So yeah. We've done all right up there. Yeah, it's sort of a difficult one, really. I mean, there's so many games, you can't expect us to win all the time. And I think the fact that we've won the last couple maybe gives us that little bit of breathing space. So I don't think a point would be, a terrible result on this occasion. But obviously we'd be looking for 3 ideally. So, we'll see what happens when it's a bit of a tough spell for us now because we've got 3 away games. I mean, we've got this, then we've got Luton on the weekend, and we've got Bournemouth then the weekend after. So yeah, it's going to be a grueling week. I suppose the good thing is that we don't, a lot of them then they're reasonable distances, aren't they? But we're not going all the way up north for every one of them, and then because they can be pretty grueling. I think at least the others are a bit more down south. I'm not sure if that will make a huge difference, but those long northern trips they're a bit of a killer at times. So at least there is only one of them in there. But I mean, it's such a relentless schedule, and as I've kept saying all season, things can change very quickly because the games are coming so thick and fast. So we'll see where it takes us. But I think Blackburn won't be an easy game, that's for sure.
It is. I don't think with the way we play any game is going to be easy because we make it as difficult to watch as we can. Really, we don't look to blow teams away or make it comfortable for ourselves. So I think we're in for another 13 or so games more of this, I'm afraid. But favourable refereeing decisions. We can do nothing about. Brentford fans on Twitter, shut up. You can't do anything about it. Stoke fans, if the ref decides to give us a penalty, that's on the ref. At the end of the day, your midfielder has been chucking himself about all second half, all over the pitch. He won you a few free kicks right outside our box. He wasn't touched any time. Any time. You didn't complain about that. We called him a diving prick. Yeah, he was. And you would say the same about Norton. But the ref was being conned. So, it's nothing to do with the Swans. And Stoke fans, Boro fans, Brentford fans, they're all piping up on Twitter. I heard someone suggest they do a crowdfund, a Brentford fan, unsurprisingly. They're a delightful bunch, aren't they? Who suggested they pay Warnock's impending fine because he said it as it is about Swans. They're very bitter, aren't they? And there's a lot of bitter football fans about after yesterday evening, Steve.
Yeah, Brentford especially, they're a really funny one. I mean, they've had it in for us for a while, haven't they? I don't know what it is with them. The strange thing is with Brentford, I think there's a lot to like about them. They do play this nice style of football, and they're a club that are essentially punching above their weight. So there is some respect for them. They've got a lot of good players as well. But I mean, I don't like the manager much, and it seems like that fan base of theirs has a sense of entitlement for a club which have not been in the top division for 80 years. So it is a bit of a strange one, really. I don't really get Brentford. I got to be honest with you. So it would be quite nice if we pipped them to a promotion spot.
Yeah, and up until the last few weeks of last season, I was a big fan. I really wanted them to go up. Another 80 years of misery wouldn't do me any harm for them. I would quite happily see that now. Very odd bunch. Seem to be trying to drum up some sort of rivalry, which probably says more about them than anything else, really. We're looking at the fixtures, Steve. We've just, touched on Blackburn, and we'll go back to that and talk about what we do. Luton follows it. But after that, you've got Bournemouth, as you say, away, which is going to be a very difficult game with them looking like they're trying to fight onto the edge of the playoffs, even if I think Jonathan Woodgate is a terrible manager. It's going to be a tough game. And then following that is the Cardiff game. So I'm looking at the first two fixtures we've got coming up, Blackburn and Luton, and saying, well, you can't predict the next two after that. And these are going to be tough games. But I really feel like 4 or 6 points out of these two games is what we need to keep the pressure on at the top of the table.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. It does look like it's going to be quite a high total, I would say, to go up this year. You might be looking at about 90 points. So we're probably going to need from 4 points, as you say, really, from the next couple. We're probably going to be focusing like that, I would say. And every time we come on here now and go in, right, from the next two, we're looking at 4 points. You won't always get 4 points. You may well get 6 in some. But that's got to be the way that we look at it. I mean, if we keep doing that, then that will be enough to go up, I'd have thought. But I mean, there's going to be a lot of twists and turns, isn't there? I mean, it would be disappointing. I think Blackburn and Luton, they are sides that they're really in the middle. You can't see them getting some sort of late run together to get in the playoffs. So arguably, they don't have a great deal maybe to play for, but that doesn't mean it's going to be an easy game or anything like that. I still think it's going to be quite tricky, and we're going to have to see how we get on. But you'd certainly say that we'd be targeting 4 points from these two. I think if we were to get 4, then there wouldn't be too many complaints, would there?
No, there wouldn't. I was a big fan of Cooper giving Lowe a well overdue rest, even if the Horahan experiment, which I hold my hands up, I've been calling for a while, that he needs to, give Horahan a chance to play. It worked in the last 2 minutes against Stoke. It looked very exciting, and like you say, we were pushing for a winner there. Even if it didn't look like it would come, it looked more fluid up top, and it made us look a bit more of a threat. I think it's fair to say it didn't really work against Boro. The performance wasn't there. We couldn't get the ball out of our half. Boro dominated most of the game. The territory just wasn't there. Horahan struggled to impose himself on the game, which we see regularly from him. I mean, he's a goal or an assist in him every other game, so you almost feel obliged that he features. But he's a bit of an enigma, isn't he, Conor Horahan? And where he fits in, because almost playing him gives you a real chance from set pieces, but you'd sacrifice some control.
Yeah, it's all about balance, really, isn't it? I mean, I think Hourihane probably hasn't been as influential as we maybe would have hoped. I think, there's no doubt in his ability, but he can be quite quiet in games. But it's the fact then that he does offer you this goal threat, doesn't he? Obviously, there's always the set pieces, there's the long range shooting and this type of thing, and he brings attributes that we don't really have, do we? I mean, there isn't a lot of flair in his team. It's a very hard working team, and if we're honest, we don't create enough chances and we don't score enough goals. So, but he's a player that sort of helps with that. So it's a difficult one. I think, as you say, it didn't really work yesterday, him playing like behind a striker. So we definitely need to look maybe at what the balance is in terms of what's best for us going forward. So, but I think in general, you do want Hourihane in the team, because if he doesn't play, the goal threat that we offer is a lot less, isn't it?
It is, and with that, I'm going to ask you how you would set up against Blackburn, because I'm torn on this one.
Yeah, this is the thing. I think we need to continue to rotate, if I'm honest with you. So I would bring Ryan Bennett into the team, maybe for Cabango. I'm trying to think, what else would I do? I'd probably move Hourihane possibly into Fulton's position to give Fulton a rest. I think that's how I'd look at it, because I think you need to rotate. I think Smith should stay in because he's the one that's had the longer rest, because he was fit for a bit and didn't come back in, did he? I probably would bring Lowe back into the team then, because he's had that 1 game rest. So I guess that's how I'd be looking at it. I mean, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I'm almost torn whether we start Lowe. I agree with the other suggestions. Lowe is one where we saw, when he comes on against towering defenders, then obviously he's a threat. But he is so teetering on the edge of his own fitness levels at the moment.
Well, maybe. Do you reckon you play Whittaker then?
I would like to see Whittaker.
That might be worth a go.
I would like to see Whittaker start a game and give him an opportunity. He came on against Man City. He's come on a couple of sub appearances late on, but I'd like to see him get a start, just to see. We saw against Man City, he knows where the back of the net is. He's obviously a talent there. But if nothing else, it just gives Lowe a little bit more time. And if it's not working, then and we need to get back into it, we can bring Lowe on. And I'd fancy Lowe more for the second half of a match if he comes on as a sub than if we start him. He runs himself into the ground in the first hour, and we've got a passenger for the last half hour then. Lowe is a fantastic player at running the channels and creating mayhem and stretching the game. I mean, that's probably his greatest attributes for us is his wide play. And that works more effectively against the tiring defence, as we saw yesterday. So I'd be tempted to give Whittaker a run. Areola as well. I know there's been, on a side note, there's been an announcement by him and the club about some old tweets of his going back some 10 years ago that have resurfaced. I'm not even sure the content of them, but I think they contain some offensive terms or phrases that he's apologised for, and the club have apologised on his behalf as well. Can't see that being the reason he's not playing. Areola's got to have some game time while in Swansea, hasn't he, Steve?
Well, I think that Cooper didn't want him. That's the only explanation I can really think of now, because he's not getting any sort of look in, is he? And it's almost as if to say, was someone else involved in the decision making? Because I honestly don't understand it. I mean, we've been on about needing to freshen things up and all this kind of thing. It seemed strange, but I got to admit at the time, because with Areola, he's rumoured to be more of a wide player and this type of thing. We don't play with wingers, so where did he fit in? And it seems to be that Cooper isn't that fussed on him. That's the only way I can look at it. I mean, the other comments about him not being up to fitness because of the MLS season and this type of thing being different to ours, and obviously it doesn't start till April, so they were in off season. I mean, if that's the case, you don't sign somebody, do you? It's ridiculous, because you don't want to bring somebody in who's getting up to speed, and by the time they get up to speed, that the season's ending. So
I'm not sure as well. I mean, he played 70 minutes for the USA against Trinidad the day before he signed for us. How unfit was he?
As well.
He scored a couple as well. He couldn't have been that unfit.
Yeah, I think Cooper just doesn't like him. That must be the only explanation, because it's getting ridiculous now, and that we need to freshen things up as well. And you'd think this guy seems to have a certain amount of pedigree, but it's not going to happen, is it? Well, it doesn't look like it.
And I do think sometimes for the greater good, just having a fresh body on the pitch, someone who hasn't been flogged to death over the past 6 weeks, Areola, Whittaker, these sorts of players, not only can they get an opportunity to show what we've been missing out on, but also the player they're replacing, the Cooper's favourites, if you like, well, they get the break that they so desperately need as well. Which means invariably when they come back into the team, then they're better players for it. And you can't just keep flogging your players game in, game out. And sometimes you're better sacrificing a game and saying, right, we're going to try something different this game, because the 4 or 5 games after it, we'll benefit from them having a rest this week. Whereas you can't, if you play them week in, week out, you're not going to get anything out of them. They're going to be dead on their feet straight away. And we've seen that. We've seen that over the last few weeks with the likes of Jamal Lowe. But yeah, giving game time to the likes of Areola and Whittaker, keeping their replacements on the bench. And if they need to bring them on, I don't want to be so big-headed as to think that we're sitting there with a Cristiano Ronaldo on the bench that can, but certainly the players that Cooper trusts to make game differences, keep them on the bench. And if we need to bring them on, then we bring them on. And as we saw yesterday, Lowe came on and he set up the penalty. So, for me, we have to make 2 or 3 changes, but we have to, make sure that we give in the right players a rest as well. And maybe, if it's not Jamal Lowe, maybe it's Ayew's turn to have a little breather. He has come back into scoring form now, which would be the wrong time perhaps to take him out of the lineup, because he did go through a dry spell, Steve, and it's good to see him back among the goals.
Yeah, it definitely is. I know some of them have been penalties, but obviously he took the other one quite well yesterday as well. So, yeah, I think there may be a game where AU needs to be taken out of the firing line, but I mean, you wouldn't do it this coming week, would you? You certainly wouldn't do it at Blackburn, because obviously he's hit form and he must be feeling great right now, having scored a couple of late penalties to win us games. So I think we need to keep him in maybe for now. But I suppose the way to look at it would be, and this hasn't happened often this season, but if we're a couple of goals up, then maybe we could take him off at that point. But that's not really the way that we play, is it?
No. We rarely go looking for a second goal when we're 1-0 up, but
we don't go looking for a first.
Football. I don't think anything will surprise me anymore this weird and wonderful season. Everything you thought you knew about the game has been proven to be utter bullshit, and we've been shown up to be the charlatans that we are. We don't know what we're talking about. You'd assume that a good performance gives you the best chance of a win. Well, actually, complete shithousery gives you the best chance of a win if recent events are anything to go by. What was your score prediction for Blackburn then?
I'm going to say 1-1.
Okay. I am going to say, I'm going to agree with you with that one. I think we might draw it. I normally go for a win, but our recent performances perhaps have left a lot to be desired. Surely we can't keep getting the 97th minute penalties to get us out of jail, but we'll see. Are you interested in giving a rundown of Luton, or shall we wait until the Blackburn game's out of the way?
Well, we can talk a bit about Luton. I can't say I know a great deal about them. I mean, when we played them earlier in the season, I thought they were quite good. I think we scored early on, didn't we? And then we got another one late to seal the win. But I think Luton are not a bad side. I think they're in the bottom half. I mean, my general view of Luton is that they're a club that could do well the next few years. I think they're waiting for a new stadium. So I think if they can just stay in this division until they get to that point, then they could be looking at getting quite big crowds, and then that'll give them a decent chance of progress really further forward. So I think that's the situation that they're in. But it seems to work, doesn't it, with Nathan Jones? And he's done well since going back. And of course, Adrian Forbes is on the coaching staff, isn't he?
Yeah, it's weird how some people are suited to some clubs, aren't they? And he had a torrid time at Stoke. Nathan Jones, The win, of course, that gave him a stay of execution, Steve, I don't need to remind you, was down at the Liberty last season. But he did go eventually and went back to his former club, where he had great success the year before, and went back, and now he's got Luton, firing again, and a very respectful mid-table finish looks on the cards for them. It's not going to be an easy game, and again, I would suggest we would be forced into making 2 or 3 changes for this one. I think this is the one I would have to say, particularly if we manage a draw against Blackburn, and we're not winning against Luton late on, we need to start really taking risks, because I don't think we can afford to not win either of the 2 games coming up.
Yeah, I'd probably say the same. I mean, we can probably afford to say at Blackburn that we'll take the point. I think if it's the case of Luton, we need to try and push for a winner. I hope that's how we look at it anyway. I mean, obviously, if we get the win at Blackburn, then maybe we can be at Luton and think, oh, well, the draw isn't so bad. But yeah, as we said, really 4 points needed from these games. So if that plays out with a draw at Blackburn, then hopefully we will push for that win at Luton.
I think I said in the last podcast a couple of weeks ago, it's weird when you're at either end of the table and you're obviously battling for either survival or promotion, how different. Because if you are down the bottom, battling for survival, then you're there by means of losing most weeks. So winning game after game after game after game is never going to be the case if you're down there, unless you have some miracle turnaround. But it's always about just staying in games and nicking an odd win here. But when you're at the top, it is so difficult to get out of this division. And as you talked about the high totals you could expect, well, Brentford, Watford, us, and to a lesser extent Reading, we're all egging each other on, aren't we? By winning, we're forcing the other team to go that extra yard to make sure they win, just so we keep our heads in the mix. And you're having to go on some crazy runs of form just to keep in the mix, and it's driving the points tallies up and up, and you can't really afford to have a blip.
It feels like that, doesn't it? Because I think last year the points total was a bit lower for West Brom, who had that final promotion place. So yeah, I mean, you get years, don't you, where it can vary. I mean, if you look at various seasons in the Premier, obviously the infamous 40 points always gets mentioned. It's never that much, but then you'll get other seasons where it could be nearer 30. I mean, we're looking like this is a season where you're going to need quite a lot to go up. I mean, you usually, I think, need more like mid-80s, but we could be looking at early 90s this year potentially. So whoever does get it is going to have to earn it, I would have thought, because it does seem like that total could be high, judging for how well everybody's doing at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. So give us a score prediction for Luton then. I'll start with 1-0 win.
Yeah, I'm actually going to do the same again. I'm going to say 1-0.
Yeah. Fingers crossed. I mean, I'd take 4 points from them 2 games, and then we come up to Bournemouth away and Cardiff at home. The opportunity to do a historic double that's never been done in the South Wales derby. Cardiff, it's been widely reported, have picked up form spectacularly under Slick Mick, and he's in position there now. I feel like he's, and from all reports I've read and seen of them, he's got them working at a level which unfortunately doesn't look like it could be sustainable. They look knackered, and maybe he's running them hard to get the points on the board. But we'll see how it plays out. They had a very uninspiring draw against Huddersfield on Friday, and should have lost that game by all accounts. But it's a couple of games to go between now and then. So where Cardiff and Swansea are at the time may play into the importance of the game, but you never need an excuse for the South Wales derby, do you? So we'll talk a lot more about that in the next podcast, of course. But that's it from us. So thanks for staying with us for this long. And from myself and Steve, it's goodbye from us. Bye-bye.